Today's interaction is a build-up on what we started last week. The general topic that we were discussing last week was professional ethics principles, fundamental principles of professional ethics. We said that on top of corporate governance and the directives in terms of international auditing standards, on top of those things, the auditor's own attitude, the auditor's approach, the auditor's professional conduct is also something that we need to look at that can help in the solution of the agency problem. The agency problem being the problem that shareholders as principals on one hand and management and board of directors as agents controlling the business on the other hand. They are supposed to do the controlling and the management of the business in the interest of the shareholders' principals. But as Adam Smith said, because we are all self-interested, there is a likelihood that the board of directors and its management will have their personal interest overriding the interest of the business and therefore the interest of the shareholders. And one of the ways to deal with this problem is having auditors check the reliability of the reporting from the board and its management to the shareholders, so that the auditors will say yes, the accounts are true and fair, or they are not, and that gives information to shareholders based on which they will make a decision whether to keep their investment in the company or to sell out their company, or even before that, whether they should remove the board and its management and install a new one or not. Okay. So we have looked at all of those things, and then we are saying we started by last week. We are saying by last week's lecture, which is going to continue today, that professional ethics, the way we have agreed to do the work, ethics, also matters if we have to strengthen that kind of framework, the audit framework, which goes to help in the solving of the agency problem. So what we did basically last week is to look at the fundamental principles of ethics or ethical behavior. And by that, we discussed the 5 fundamental principles of ethical behavior or professional ethics as integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, professional behavior. We took each of these fundamental principles of professional ethics one after the other. We gave examples. We explained what it represents. We gave examples. Some students in the class asked questions and we responded to those questions. On top of that, hello? If you join the class, you mute your mic. If you give us disturbance, I'll just take you out of the class. So, apart from the discussion on the fundamental principles of ethical behavior, we also talked about some factors that can pose threats to auditors' adherence to these fundamental principles of professional ethics. And I want to engage the class. This is kind of a recall session or review section. That's what it is, review section. So let's try to remind ourselves, about what we said concerning the factors that can mitigate against, the factors that can make it difficult for the auditor to adhere to the fundamental principles of ethical behavior. So it's a question to the class. Please, I need your participation. If you want to comment, if you want to talk, you just tell me your name, because I don't have the screen that has your names. So you tell me your name and I'll give you the opportunity to comment. Yes, who is talking?
Hello.
Yes, your name, please.
Prince.
Yeah, Prince. So talk to us.
Yeah, we talked about intimidation. Intimidation.
We talked about intimidation. I don't remember we talked about that, but tell us about how intimidation can result, can be a hindrance, can serve as a roadblock to the auditors adhering to principles of professional ethics.
Okay, when we talk about intimidation, we are talking about making someone fear, which will make him or her not to do something that he will be able to do without fear.
Okay,
so the person will act in a way that will be favorable to you.
Sure, that's good. Okay, so thank you very much. The name again, please. Okay.
Prince Abu.
Yeah, Prince. Thank you very much, Prince. Who else wants to say something about what we said to be the roadblocks?
Hello.
Yes, your name, please.
Sir, I'm Edward.
Yeah, Eddie, we are listening to
Edward
you.
Esque.
Yes, sir.
Sir, and we talked about self-interest.
Self-interest, good.
Right, and the self-interest. Yeah, we said that this threat override from a lot of factors.
Exactly.
And I remember we made mention of the financial interest.
Yes.
Where the auditor is an investor in an entity, he or she is about to audit.
Yes.
And also we mentioned about the auditor having a close business relationship with the entity that is about to go and audit.
Yeah.
And he been in employment with the client's company. So we mentioned a lot of factors that will lead to the self-interest. And these are the factors that will hinder the professional behavior, the fundamental principles of professional ethics.
Thank you very much.
Some of the things that we discussed.
Thank you very much. I like the way you presented your review. And before I forget, the topic we are discussing now, fundamental principles of professional ethics. You have to read the topic from page 53 of the recommended text. And in fact, let me take the opportunity to clarify something. I have given you all the information you need for the semester as far as reading and practicing are concerned. Today, the course rep, Deborah, was asking for information in the form of maybe past questions, and all of them are already given you. I gave you the website. The website houses all of such information, reading materials, other explanatory materials, some commentary that makes the understanding so flexible, some past questions. They are all on the website, and I linked the website to the Google Classroom. Who is that? So please, make use of all the resources I've given you. In case you are finding it difficult navigating to get the right information, Make your friends who have been able to navigate and gotten the right stuff help you do that. Don't just sit down and provide excuses. I have given information you need and even beyond. They are all right there. They are there every day. And it is in your palm. You can access it everywhere at all times. Okay. So you can read that the details of the topic from chapter 53 of that textbook. That textbook is ACCA F8, Audit and Assurance Textbook. And the soft copy of the book is on the website that I have shared with you. If you can't find it, let those who have found it help you do so. Okay. So apart from self-interest, which is explained to us, what other threats, all the issues that can serve as an impediment to the auditor in applying professional ethics, we describe them as threats to professional ethics. And we have talked about self-interest, and someone talked about intimidation. What again did we say?
Hello. Good.
Yes, sir, please, you can talk.
Please, we talked about self-review threats. Where you give us an example, like when we are being allowed to set our own questions, how we set them and how we answer.
Yes, but you know.
So he said, for the self-review threats, it occurs when the auditor is the same prepares the accounts and has been asked to come and audit it. There won't be independence and then he won't be
I
objective.
have an online lecture now, so maybe I'll call you later, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you very much. So we also talked about self-review, right? And we will talk about, in fact, we talked in detail about self-interest and self-review. Even though I mentioned all of them, including intimidation, we didn't expand the intimidation. But we did expand the self-interest and the self-review. So let's continue from advocacy threats. And there are 5 of such threats: self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, and intimidation. We have exhaustively talked about self-interest and self-review. So let's begin from advocacy threats. Advocacy threat features in the form of the auditor appearing to be the mouthpiece, to be the PRO of the audit client. Then you are playing an advocacy role in the organization. What are some of the things that can exhibit advocacy? What are some of the things that, if the auditor does, it can representing the fact that the auditor is speaking on behalf and in so many ways taking sides with the audit client? Please, let's do that general discussion. What do you think? You see, the auditor is a referee. You have to remember that one from day one. The auditor is a referee. So he needs to do his job well, to be independent, and to be objective. He needs not to take sides. He needs to be very neutral so he can give a fair judgment between the two parties, the shareholders and the management and the board on one hand. So if the auditor takes the position of speaking explaining things on behalf of the audit client, advocating on behalf of the audit client, then that thing can cause him not to be fair. It's like he's taking a side. And we are asking for some of the things that if the auditor does, it will speak advocacy, that he needs to be aware of so he doesn't do those things. Let's discuss them openly like that. Hello class, it's an open question to all of us. Advocacy threats. Hello, are you sleeping? Yes, please, you can talk. You mention your name and you talk.
Sir, please, we don't get, actually, I don't get the input of the whole question, like what the question is about. So if you can clarify so that we can get more understanding.
Okay, so let me give the question again. We are talking about a threat to objectivity and independence of the auditor, and that specific threat is the advocacy threat. In general, the advocacy threat is where the auditor takes the position of defending, speaking on behalf, speaking for the audit client. If the auditor is put in that situation where he has to talk to defend the audit client, talk on behalf of the audit client, represent the audit client in maybe some forum, speaking in the name of the audit client, that will speak obviously that the auditor is like taking a side. Remember, the auditor's role is purely the role of a referee. So for example, if you're a referee between Manchester United and Liverpool, and we hear you as a referee speaking things on behalf of Manchester United, giving out their game plan and speaking about the changes that they should be making, you are speaking Man United staff. That will not make you seen to be neutral. That will not make you to be seen as neutral because you are speaking for the other party. How about the other party? You have to stand neutrally in between two people and judge between them. Judge in court. Okay, so that's generally what the advocacy threat is. If the auditor is pushed into such a situation where he has to be speaking for the audit client, has to be representing the audit client in some events, and so on and so forth. So the question I was asking was actually if you can itemize some specific things. I've given the overview of what advocacy threat is. Some specific things that around the explanation I've given, you can say to be an element of advocacy threat.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please, we are listening to you.
Sir, please, an example.
Yes, an example.
Sir, my name is Musa.
Yeah, Musa, let's listen to you.
One of the examples is, let's say, the auditor representing his or her client. Sir, please, one of the examples is that, let's say, the auditor representing his or her client in a dispute with tax authority.
In what? Representing the client in...
Hello, sir.
Yes, I'm listening, please. Are you having a connection problem? We can
Hello?
hear you, so go ahead and talk. We can hear you.
I said the auditor representing his or her client in a dispute
In a
with the
dispute,
tax
okay.
authority.
Good. Good. Very good example.
A dispute between tax authorities.
Good, I've heard you. That's a very good example. So what he's saying is that
That could be or that could result in an advocacy threat.
yes.
Since
Yes.
okay, in this case, he will be the mouthpiece of his or her client. Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Network.
That's good. I think your connectivity is a little bit problematic. But what you have said is 100% true. So let me expand it a little bit. When the auditor is, first of all, and this is how it may come about. The auditor may be giving a non-audit service. We talked about self-review and we talked about non-audit service. Non-audit service can even be tied to self-interest. So sometimes you have to see where the connection is coming from. When the auditor is giving a consulting job to oversee the tax issues for the audit client, that is a non-audit service the auditor is providing, and that is business. In most cases, the auditors get a lot of money from these non-audit services. And if they don't take care, they will be self-interested because they get so much money from there, and they may water the standard. So that can be tied to self-interest as well. But what I'm picking from that as an advocacy threat is that where the auditor has been given that non-audit service may be in the area of tax. I'm explaining it around what he just said. So the auditor is overseeing the tax issues for the client. And the tax authorities happen to have a problem with the way the company is, manipulating its tax figures. Because the auditor was the one who is responsible for the tax things, he will be naturally drawn into that issue. And the auditor may naturally, spontaneously, be wanting to explain to the tax authorities why the figures that they are seeing is the way it is, because you did it on behalf of the client. And that will send you into a position where what the client needs to say by itself, you are now saying it for the client. That's not your job. So it may come first of all from non-audit services, which have their own problems, own threats to independence and objectivity. But this is how it can lead into advocacy threats. Because you prepare the tax returns, you file them, you are advising the client on all the tax things they are doing. Tax authorities have big issues with it. They think the client is the client company is even fraudulently evading tax. Because you did it, you may have to step in and explain to the tax authorities. You are advocating. You are kind of doing things that the client itself should be doing. That's a good example of advocacy threats. And all other examples that you can give can actually revolve around, most of them will revolve around the fact that the auditor may be doing non-audit services, and the auditor, because he has so much interest from there, the auditor will automatically be drawn to explain things on behalf of the client, and so on and so forth. So generally, that's what the advocacy threat is. And the auditor needs not to be seen to be doing this. The auditor needs not to be seen to be doing this. Apart from not being seen to be doing that, he must not also actually do those things. He must not actually do them or create any impression that he is doing those things. Very, very important. So that's about the advocacy threats. Do you have any questions or any comments that you want to give on advocacy threats? I think the meaning is straightforward by just the word advocacy threats, and a few examples we have given have expanded our understanding of what the advocacy threats is all about. Do you have any question or any comments you want to make before we make progress? Please, the name. Just mention your name and go ahead, please. No time to waste.
No question.
No question, okay. But how would you know whether someone has a question? So no question for yourself. Okay, so nobody is asking a question, it means no question. Now let's go to familiarity threats. Familiarity threats. From the word familiarity, and maybe generally from the word family. Family. It's the whole idea is about closeness. 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 If you become so close with someone, you may not be 100% straightforward when it comes to applying judgment on that person. Take it for example, if you are a lecturer and you happen to be marking your wife's script, what do you think will happen? Hello, class. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Are you really? Have you just logged in and doing your own thing, or you are listening to the class?
Sir, we are listening.
But it takes so long a time when I ask a question for a response to come from the class. It appears like you are not listening, so you don't even hear the question I pose.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone can just mention the name and proceed to answer the question. The question was, we were talking about familiarity threats, and I said the main thing in there is about closeness. If you become so close to someone, you cannot be very objective when it comes to judgment on that person. And I gave an example. As a teacher or a lecturer, we judge, we pass judgment on students. When we teach, we administer a test. We first administer a test to measure students' understanding. We read the information that the data on their scores is giving us, and then we make judgment on them whether this student has understood it A or B or C, or that student needs to be repeated to take the course again. That's judgment. And I give an example, like if I am in the process of making this judgment, I happen to be marking my wife's script. Take it to be yourself. You are a lecturer, you are marking your wife's scripts. What do you think will happen? That's the question. And this one, you have to respond to it quickly. But you're always sitting down so boring.
Sir.
Please,
Alreen. What did you say your name was? The female who wanted to talk.
Sir, please, Evelyn.
Evelyn, please. Let's hear you.
Sir, please, I'll give my wife straight A.
28.
Straight A, yeah, straight A.
Straight A. Oh, okay.
Yes.
I'm sure the way you are speaking, you will not even write. So in your case, it will be your husband, right?
Yes.
I'm sure you will not even mark the script. In your mind, he has gotten A already, regardless of what he has written. Okay, so you can understand how closeness can impair our judgment. So the auditors need to be very careful when they are getting closer and closer and closer to the audit client. What can get the auditor so close, so familiar with the audit client and can cause the problem that we are discussing? What are some of the things that can cause the auditor to be so close?
Yes, sir. I'm Pius.
Please, your
I
name.
believe one of the Pius, sir, Pius.
Yeah, Pius.
Yeah, I believe one of the things that can cause that kind of familiarity is when one auditor is used for a long period of time, for say between 6 to 10 years. When that happens, because of that kind of length of time, there will be that kind of relationship and familiarity will grow from that point. Thank you very much.
Exactly, Pius. That is exactly true. So you see, this is how the auditing firm is structured. On almost every, the auditors divide themselves in teams, because the auditors, unless it's a very small and maybe newly established audit firm, they will have a lot of audit clients. They will have a lot of companies that they are auditing. So they divide themselves between these audit clients, the companies they are auditing. So let's say our class forms an audit firm, and we audit universities. University of Cape Coast is our audit client. University of Ghana, another audit client. KNUST, audit client. UNER, audit client. UDS, audit client. Winneba, audit client. And almost all the private universities are audit clients. For us to, and all of these companies need their accounts to be audited the same year. They want their accounts are being audited, and we have to pass a judgment. So the audit firm will divide itself into teams. And the team is normally referred to as engagement team or audit team. So we'll have a team that will go to do UCC's audit. Another team maybe for UG's audit. If it happens that, and the team is structured this way, there will be a senior most team member. That person is mostly the audit partner. Audit partner is the most experienced person, the most senior most person in any audit team, audit or engagement team. So the audit partner is there, the senior most. And then we may have audit manager who comes directly under the audit partner. We may have audit senior who also comes under the audit manager. We may have audit juniors, the other people that support the work. The audit partner and the audit manager, they have much influence on the audit judgment, the final opinion that the auditor will pass, whether the accounts are true and fair or not. They have the authority to do that and influence any decision on that. So if the audit partner for UCC, year 1, year 2, the same audit partner and the same audit manager. Year 3, the same audit partner. Year 4, the same audit partner. Year 5, the same audit partner. Beyond 5 years, like he said, maybe up to 10 years, the more you are being kept. And in practice, when they are going for the audit work, the client company prepare, they receive them very well. They put out a lot of hospitality towards them. I mean, they hire hotels for them, and they will normally treat them nice by hiring maybe one of the top hotels in the area. Apart from that, they will give them nice meals. They will take them to places, especially the big companies. They can take them for some sightseeing, expensive stuff. And you, the auditor, the audit partner, the audit manager, the senior most people. Our focus is on the senior people because the juniors sometimes don't have so much influence. So the main focus is on the seniors. This audit partner and the audit manager are always attending these sightseeings and, I mean, conversing in a friendly way with the key management people in the client company, so that they have become, over many years, they have become friends. Just think about just 4 years of staying together as a class. People you never knew. Now you have become so close, so you can imagine. And even in your relationship, not so much money, not so much hospitality things are happening. We are talking about where the company, big people, take the audit partner and the audit managers and the other audit members to big places. They are there with them. They take them to, which big places can you find in Ghana? I don't normally go out, so I don't know the big places. You've gone there before?
Not yet.
But you will go there. Which other place? Apart from hotel, which other places that you think makes people happy that the company management may want to take the auditors, make them feel good? Places in Ghana. Those who have been roaming.
Yeah. We will big ambassador with them.
That's a hotel, right? It's a hotel. So apart from a hotel, which other things can they do to them that will make them so happy?
Sir, please, they will find them.
Deborah. Was that Deborah speaking? Hello, Debbie. Debbie is lost. But any other person can talk. When we are discussing these things and I don't get plenty response, it saddens me. Because this is general knowledge areas. You have to be talking. You yourself, if you were auditor. Apart from big hotels that, the company can take you, which other things would you like, would you feel happy if they do for you? That's how you have to see it, and this one shouldn't take even 1 second for you to respond.
Some do take others to cruise on the sea and other stuff.
Good. So the company can have some lucrative, expensive yachts. Then maybe after the day's work, or maybe on weekends, the audit partner or the senior audit team members, together with senior people of the client company, they take the yachts and they are just enjoying. And someone was saying they can get something. They can even get girls for the audit partners and the audit managers. The male audit partners and the audit managers. Or you think it cannot happen?
It is possible.
In fact, it does happen. So all of these things plus more can make the auditor and the key
Some do go for trips abroad.
good. So when someone is doing all of these things to you, wouldn't you form close friendship with that person? It will automatically come like that. You become a good friend to yourselves. And on top of that, sometimes they also help themselves in terms of job. I am the auditor, senior most. I audit this client. This client is a very big company that everybody wants to work with. My nephew has just finished the university. Can't I talk to the senior people in the company so they find a job for my nephew? My wife wants a job. And I am so close with this company. I have friendship with the top people. I can lobby for my wife to be a worker there. And once these kind of relationships are building, and the more they keep building, the more the two parties become close to themselves. But the more the company, key managers, and the senior people in the audit team become so close to themselves. And when they become that familiar, we are saying it creates familiarity threats. These things, this familiarity can make you not be straightforward when you are passing judgment that involves these friends you have formed. These friends you have found. For example, can you look at this managing director or chief executive officer who is so much a lovely person to you. You go to abroad trips with him, holidays. It's part of the treats. They take you in the company's yacht, they take you around, they find girlfriends for you, blah, 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 blah. And then in your audit, you find that some fraud has happened and it is connected to this person. And if your judgment is upright, this person may go to jail for about 30 years. As human beings as we are, because of that familiarity, you may want to not expose the friend. And that will be choosing familiarity over professional behavior. Choosing familiarity over a professional way to do the job. And that will be against fundamental principles of professional ethics. So that is how familiarity threats can be looked at. Any other thing that you want to talk about in terms of familiarity? Now the last one is intimidation. Someone gave us a gist of intimidation. But let's take it in full. Let's discuss it together fully. From the face of the word intimidation, we can say that intimidation threat is where the auditor, in whatever way, is made or is deterred. The auditor is deterred in whatever way by the client from acting objectively. Intimidation threat can be explained as where the auditor is deterred by the client in whatever way, so that the client is not able to do his job. The auditor is not able to do his job objectively. That's intimidation threat. They may not feature directly in terms of how we readily see intimidation. like someone has put a gun on your head. It may not come like that. So you have to assess it generally from just what I said. Anything that the client puts in place and the client has the objective of deterring the auditor from being objective because of those things the client has put in place can be captured as intimidation threat. For example, if the client makes the payment of the auditor be based on maybe how much tax. Let's say, let me open it up. The client has given some non-audit service. The client has given non-audit service to the auditors. And the fees involved in the non-audit service that the client is pledging to pay the auditors. The client is saying that if the auditors are able to work things out so that the tax that they pay to the tax authorities become as low as a certain figure maybe they mentioned, then that is a clear example of intimidation. It might not come in the form of intimidation like, hey, if you don't do this, I'll kill you, or I'll not pay your money, I'll do this. It is coming in a subtle way. So indirectly, what the client is saying is that, I'm telling you, you should find a way to make the tax charge be this amount. Otherwise, you will not get what you want. Even though they did not speak it directly, that is in effect what they are trying to say by saying that, okay, your fee will be determined based on how low you bring the tax burden. It's an example of intimidation threats. What can you also think?
It's a question.
Okay, question.
Yeah, I'm pious. With this example you just gave concerning the audit fees, isn't there a clear-cut maybe line where every company should be able to pay any auditor when they audit their reports for them?
Yeah, in fact, maybe let me explain what I said again. Maybe I was not clear. I said, let's say the audit client has given a non-audit service. At this point, everybody should be able to draw a line between the audit service proper and non-audit services that the auditors can also do. We explained it in the last week's lecture. The audit is the main work, the statutory audit. For listed companies, it is even by force. That is why the company needs to still find an auditor. When the auditors get to the client, there are so many other jobs outside of the audit work that the client sometimes give to the auditor to do for them because the client may not have capacity. For example, tax issues. Because tax issues is intertwined with so many laws. Most companies, for lack of qualified people to understand the tax laws and all those kind of things, sometimes will give that job of tax things to the auditor. A big audit firm like KPMG and the likes, they have so much capacity, they have people who understand thoroughly the tax regime of our country. So the client may be comfortable that, okay, deal with those things for me. If I make my own people do, I may go into trouble. So that is an example of a non-audit service. The auditor came to do the statutory audit, but now he has gotten a consultancy work of overseeing the tax affairs of the client. And the client pays separately for the non-audit services, apart from the audit services. The non-audit services are consultancy work It's not part of the statutory audit. So I was just trying to explain intimidation from that angle, from the non-audit side angle. So it becomes like, okay, we are giving you this job, but the basis of we giving you the job is that you have to make sure our tax charge is as low as this. And if you are able to do that, then we will pay you this amount. If not, then you won't pay. That kind of position can drag the auditor in several ways. It even has an element of self-interest threat. Will the auditor look at what he will gain? I mean, monetary wise, and forget about how he professionally needs to approach the work. If he chooses to be interested in the money that will come from the consultancy, that is self-interest. And the client's behavior of telling the audit firm that you get this money and you have to do this until you get this money, this must be done, is an intimidation. So I'm saying don't see intimidation as only maybe someone threatening to kill you or something. Intimidation, as far as what we are learning, auditing here, can come in the form of any position that the client takes that makes members of the audit team be deterred from acting objectively. It's a form of intimidation. I don't know if I've explained your answer. If you still have a question, please, you can bring it up.
No, sir, I'm okay. What you said satisfied me. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. So that is intimidation. Now let's look at these threats are there. These threats are there automatically. But does it mean that because naturally we are all self-interested. If I am an auditor, the fact that I am an auditor doesn't mean I shouldn't invest. I cannot buy shares in companies if the companies are doing well. Everybody wants money. But we are saying that these behaviors, all of those things we have discussed, pose threats to the independence and objectivity of the auditor. Does it mean the auditor shouldn't work at all? Because when he works, he will go into some of these issues because they will definitely be there. The auditor will definitely become a friend to the top people, no doubt about that. And the client company will always receive the audit team in a nice way. That one will always happen. And that will naturally create friendship between them. So what is it? It will definitely happen. So what do we do? The auditors cannot say that they will not go and do the work, because if they go and do the work, these threats will come up. If they don't go and do the work, where do they get the money? How do they feed themselves and their families? And lastly, how do they provide the assurance to the people who need the assurance? So the work must definitely be carried out in the midst of all these threats. So what we do is, or what the profession requires, is that the auditors try as hard as possible to put in place what is called safeguards. Safeguards. Things that can help in eliminating the threats or reducing the threats to the barest minimum. Safeguards. And the safeguards can be many. And most of the safeguards, they are very commonsensical things. So if we pick something like self-interest, which features in the form of a top audit team member having significant shares in the audit client, the safeguard could be that, it can be many things, but it's always about what is most appropriate. And of course, what is even most appropriate is judgmental. So it can be a lot of things that can be done. The shares that is being held by the senior audit team member can be sold off. So we are disposing of the threat. We are kind of removing the threat. Can be sold off. If I sell the shares off, I don't have any financial interest in the firm I'm going to audit, which can sway my decision. Apart from the shares being sold off, the person, if he's the audit partner or the audit manager, who has those specific shares, can be removed from that particular team. So if I am the audit partner and I'm on the team going to audit UCC, and I have the shares in UCC, I can be removed from the UCC team and maybe put on the team going to Legon because I don't have any shares with Legon. So we can do the arrangements like that. That also is a safeguard which reduces the risk posed by the threat. If we take something like self-review threats, we can put a number of safeguards in place to reduce, if not to remove, the threat that self-review poses. When we're discussing in detail on the self-review threats, we learned that, or we observed that much of that threat comes from the auditor doing non-audit services for the client in the form of, doing tax, preparing tax returns, filing for the client, or overseeing in totality the tax matters for the client. That is a non-audit service. The auditor can also be given a consultancy of overseeing the internal control system, designing and implementing the internal control systems, business systems in general, or accounting systems for the client. The client has given that consultancy work. You will do them, and it is these same systems that produce, from which the financial statements are produced, which you will go and audit. And in fact, as part of the audit process, you even do controls testing, whether the client's internal control system is working. And you are the same person who set up these control systems. So when you come back and assess the same thing you did, you are self-reviewing. And that's a threat to your objectivity. If you are marking your own script, you will never be objective. I can bet you. So what can the auditor do? We are talking about the safeguards to bring this kind of threats down. This one, let's do open discussion because this is commonsensical. Anybody at all can speak something about it.
Yes, this is Pius.
Yeah, Pius.
Yeah, I believe one of the safeguards is that the person with for instance, the person with the shares in the company can be rotated to another team with another company. Yes, I think that one can help, and also the person can also opt to not audit, be part of the audit team at all because of the self-interest he has in the company at that moment in time. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Pius. So what Pius said is about self-interest. So that's another example of safeguard for self-interest. We have already exhausted self-interest. We were talking about self-review. And I gave an explanation of how usually self-review threats come about or comes about. And I was asking, with our understanding of self-review threats, what things can the auditors do as safeguards to bring that threat down to the level practically possible? Self-review. Safeguards for self-review. Hello, class. Am I talking to you? So apart from Pius and Evelyn and a few other people, Mama can modern.
Say the view.
So who are you, please?
Say please this Kobla.
Okay, Kobla, let's hear you. You've not spoken. Let's hear you.
Say please, policies can be formulated where other team members are made to do the review, either than those who are tasked to do the auditing.
Okay, so what? Did you say Komla or Kwabena?
Kobla.
Kobla. What Kobla is saying is that we can do this as a safeguard. Self-review might come in the form of we doing something for the client because the client has given us that consultancy, and we being the same people coming to vet that thing we have done. For example, if the client has given you consultancy for designing and implementing internal controls or accounting systems for the client, you have designed, you have implemented, you have charged the client has paid. Then when you are coming to do the statutory audit, you will do assessment of how these controls are working. You are coming to do assessment of how your own controls, because you set them up, are working. It's like if after quiz, I give your papers back to you to mark your own papers. That's how self-review is like. So what can they do? And what he said is right, to bring that risk down. They can do it this way. When the client gives us consultancy work, we will have a separate team that will do the consultancy work, and a separate team which will come and do the audit, so that it will not be exactly the same people who did the design and implementation of the internal control system, for example, who are coming to assess that same system. A different set of people are coming. But sometimes some people see this as a tricky way of, it's a way of lying to ourselves. If we all belong to the same audit firm, we all have the same grand objective of maximizing the profitability of the firm, the audit firm. So if a section of us come to do the systems, come to set up the systems, and another set of the same firm comes to review, how truthful can they be? Because if they find major lapses, because it will not go to affect only the reputation of the individuals but also the firm, they might not be prepared to be very objective. But it's still a safeguard, in terms of general discussion, but it might not be that much effective. That's why I'm talking about the downside of that kind of safeguard. But it's good. So that's what he said. We can have a separate team doing the consultancy work, doing the non-audit service, and a different team coming to do the statutory audit, so that it will not become direct that the same person is reviewing his own work, the same student is marking his own exam. What other thing can we put in place as a safeguard to reduce self-review threats?
Sir.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes, we are listening to you.
Hello, sir. Please, can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Edward, you can hear you. Go ahead, Edward.
Please, sir, can you hear me?
I can hear you, please.
Please, sir, the self-review. So I think that it is either they remove the affected person from the engagement team, or say they involve an additional professional accountant on the team to review the work. That is what I think they have to do. I said that with the self-review, if the auditor is the same person who's going to redo his work, then I think that they have to, yes, please, I think that they have to remove the affected person from the engagement team, or they involve an additional professional accountant on the team to review the work.
Okay. But what exactly do you mean by the affected person? In self-review, mostly it will not be just about one or two people who can be easily removed. It's about the whole of the audit team.
Please, did you get what I said?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me? Your connectivity is very poor.
Please, did you get what I said?
Hello, class. Hello?
Yeah, hello, sir. Yeah, hello, sir.
So I think his connection is very bad. But we all heard him, so let's go ahead. His first part of the response, where he said we can remove the affected person. When you look at self-review threats critically, you will see it to be mostly affecting the whole of the engagement team.
Yes, please. Very poor, very, very poor.
Yeah, as opposed to just maybe one person who can be removed.
That's I can hear you. You can go on.
Okay, so that's the first part of the answer is a little bit problematic, but the rest of what he said is correct. And it goes to build the earlier point we made where we said we can have a separate team doing the non-audit work and a separate team coming to do the statutory audit. On top of that, what he just said can also be applied. Apart from, when the audit work is finished, whether we made a separate team do the statutory audit and a separate set of people did the consultancy work, we can, as another layer of safeguard, bring in a third party, an independent person who is also a professional. Maybe we can hire him and pay him as an individual to kind of review the work, where it focus on any issue of overlooking something because of self-review threats. That person will be tasked to do that, and once that person says, okay, everything is fine, we were not biased because of self-review, then we can judge that the work is objective. So there can be an independent professional outside of the firm who will review the whole work at the end and gives us feedback. So that's another safeguard that we can have in place. So let's go to advocacy. What safeguards can we put in place? I think the clear safeguard is the audit firm taking the decision not to play any advocacy role for the client In fact, the main safeguard in this area is don't do. It's straightforward. You can't find a midway. Don't do anything that becomes like you are representing the client. You are speaking on behalf of the client. You have to stop. You cannot massage it in any way. Some of these things you have to just stop to bring in objectivity and independence. Familiarity threat. How can we deal with that threat? Those are the safeguards. The safeguards are how we will deal with that threat, to bring the threat to, if possible, remove the threat or bring it down very much so that it will not be jeopardizing. Familiarity, what would you say?
Yes, Pius.
Okay, Pius.
Yeah, I believe one of the things that can be done when it comes to familiarity threats is to have a professional accountant who is independent, who is not a member of the audit team review, to work on the senior personnel.
Okay. Thank you, Pius.
Is my point made clear? Or?
Yes, it's clear, Pius.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And Pius, within the week, today is Tuesday, right?
Yes, please, sir.
Within the week, if you get time, pass by the office. You have earned 2 marks from me for class contribution.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir.
And I told the whole class, I distribute part of the continuous assessment by this means. And it is open for everybody. You decide to take it or ignore it. You can't come to class and always keep mute. You don't share your knowledge with anybody. Then it doesn't become a class. It doesn't become a university where we are sharing ideas and building knowledge. You can find gentlemen and ladies always sitting down quiet. They don't want to say anything. Why? Why that behavior? So if you don't change...
So we are getting there, small.
Oh, but it's taking too long. Level 100 to level 400. You are seniors, though. You are seniors. By now, you should be free. You should be free to speak anything. Let's develop that habit. Be bold, talk. You are not wrong. That's what you think.
Yes, sir.
We are not in the church room where you are taught wrongs and rights, or rights from wrong, and that everything is judgmental over there. University education is not the same as religious education. So don't bring the same mindset. I am not preaching gospel. I am speaking my mind and other people's mind. You can even challenge some of the things we are speaking. You can bring in your own thinking, which can be radical to the mainstream knowledge we have now, because that's how knowledge builds. But you don't talk. So how is what we are doing a university, education? A university education where students are like dumb. They just stare at you. They don't say anything. You speak whatever you want to speak. Then they go their way, you also go your way. No knowledge sharing. No transfer of knowledge. No transfer of thoughts among us. This is not university. And you are not making it so, because I've always engaged you to speak. Okay, so that's just by the way. We were looking at familiarity and someone just responded, Pius, I gave him 2 marks. You can also respond, I'll be tracking your contribution, I'll give you marks. Who wants to respond? Safeguard for
Okay.
familiarity threats.
Hello.
Yes, please. Mention your name and go ahead.
Okay, my name is Stanley. Okay, one possible safeguard we can employ is to have a rotation plan for the senior personnel of the auditing team. A rotation plan for the auditing team.
Fantastic, especially when it comes to the senior people. So that it doesn't become like one audit partner has audited this audit client for 10 years. And when you read, I said I give you the page, go and read. You may see some specific guidance in terms of number of years, especially for companies that are registered on recognized stock exchanges. The rule is specific about some number of years, maximum number of years, that one particular audit partner or audit manager can audit a particular audit client. I think it's about a maximum of 5 years. Beyond the 5 years, you have to be changed and make some follow period come in between. So maybe 5 years, depending on how rigorous our policies are, it can take another 5 years before you come back to the same client. So when we do that kind of rotation, so that no one particular audit partner or manager spends so much time on one particular client, that can help bring the threats down. Okay, thank you. That's a very good example for familiarity threats. What other things? The auditors can, they can get familiar also from the way the client will treat them. That expensive hospitality and all those things. The auditor can have its policy where certain treatment will not be taken unless it is generally available to all members or all workers in the client company. Then you know that it is their way of life. But if it comes exclusively for you, then it becomes something like a bait, something like a trap in quotes. So the auditors can also mitigate the threat of familiarity by, first of all, toning down on the kind of hospitality they receive from the audit client. Intimidation threats. How do we mitigate that threat? How do we remove, if it is possible, or at least mitigate it? Yes, I need a female to talk. And it shouldn't be Evelyn or Deborah. I have a lot of females in the class. They are not just 3 people or 2 people. Belinda Amedahe. Belinda, are you in class? Belinda Amedahe. Absent. Lisbeth Ankama, are you in class? Absent. Awoche Irene. Irene Awotri. Absent from class. Selina Kwan. Selina in class. Selina Kwan, are you in class? Absent. Tracy Opon Mensah, are you in class? Opon Mensah Tracy. Absent. William Owusu, are you in class? Owusu William. So you just deceived me to think that you are pairing devices. So the number of people I see in class, it should be multiplied by 2. I've mentioned quite a number of names. All of them are absent. Okay, Ruth Adinda. Ruth.
Yes.
Okay, Ruth. We are talking, the last thing we are talking is about what we can do to bring the threat of intimidation threats, bring it down. If possible, remove it. If not possible to remove, at least bring it down. That's what we describe as safeguard. What can you say in connection with safeguard for intimidation threats?
With intimidation, the auditing should be made known that their fundamental principle is fundamental principle. They should also be confident and bold enough to speak. So on that, if a member feels intimidated or all the members feel they are intimidated, I think rotation would be okay. Since they feel members, they feel when they are others, they are going to try to suppress what they want to do, or they are going to make them very intimidated, they should have a rotation for them, or the profession should create a code of conduct that would actually make them bold enough to act what they want to do.
Okay, so that is according to Ruth. Thank you for the attempt. But what I want to say about your response is that we have to go back, read to get the understanding of all of these threats, clear understanding on them. Intimidation, well, from the way you were speaking, I got your perspective. I could be wrong anyway. I got a perspective that you are seeing intimidation to be maybe only physical threats. The threats that we will beat you, or some experienced threats. Maybe someone has jujued someone or something. So we have to change them, rotate them. For this particular discussion, talking about intimidation, threats in auditing, the intimidation normally or usually do not come in that brutal form, that raw form, like someone will beat someone, or someone is threatening to shoot someone, or someone will juju someone. It normally will not come in that form. So we explained that even though that can be, but it normally comes in that form. The intimidation normally comes, it can come in the form of financial. So the client is saying that, okay, we know what you want. We know what you want. But we also want you to do this before you get what you want. That is a form of intimidation. It is not a brutal form, but it's also intimidation. This form of intimidation, you can see it clearly to be some form of blackmailing. Yes, blackmailing is intimidation. Alright, so if the intimidation comes in the form of blackmailing or some financial means to deter you from being objective, because you also want some selfish things, that will be intimidation threats. So what do we do to kind of bring these situations down so they don't escalate? So
Yes,
yes.
yes, I think with the intimidation you.
Two people are speaking at the same time, so one can.
Understand?
Yes, go ahead. We are listening.
Ernest, go ahead.
Yes, we are waiting for you. You said sir, so go ahead.
Okay, sir. So I think with the intimidation, the affected parties can be withdrawn. Say the partners or the senior partner can be withdrawn from such audit engagement, so that his opinion is not affected by that intimidation.
So
okay, so I think with the intimidation, the affected party can be withdrawn from the engagement, so that his opinion is not affected by such situation.
okay, so let me ask this. Anytime, I mean, most of the responses you are giving can better be given in the form of example, in the form of a situation. If you answer them just this generic, it's sometimes I told you from the beginning how auditing questions are like. They are specific. So if you answer them just this generic way, sometimes we can't judge whether it is correct or it is incorrect. Because if, for example, the intimidation is coming in the form of the audit client trying to blackmail, trying to kind of say, okay, before you get what you want, before you get this amount of money, you will have to make sure that you bring the tax fee.
So I think with the intimidation,
We are listening to you about what you think on the intimidation.
Yes, this is suffice.
Paris, go ahead.
Fellow sir. Okay, sir. I think with the intimidation, the scenario you gave was that with regards to the tax, that is the non-statutory audit service kind of thing. Yeah, so I think with that one, it will be best for the auditor or the audit team not to engage in the other services to the clients apart from the statutory audits. I think that will help curb the intimidation threat. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so that is a good example. So where the audit client is saying, do this for me to give you this, kind of some blackmailing, you can tell the audit client that in that case, I'm not going to do it at all. So you lose any money side, you kill your self-interest in as a means of maintaining objectivity and independence. Yeah, so much of intimidation threats will have to be resolved by ceasing to act. All right. So I think we have done well in terms of the understanding. What is left is that the potholes so far. We have just had a lecture, so potholes are normal to expect. The potholes should be filled by going to read the textbook I've given you. You can read from any other textbook, but on the basis of the textbook I gave you, page 53, that starts the whole topic on professional ethics. You can read, you'll get different examples. You can also read generally from any other source. You can come to the library and pick some auditing book, open to a chapter on that, read to get a bigger insight into that. It is only by doing that that you can write or answer questions on the area to some professional level. You will write and everybody sees that, yes, you know what you are writing. It does not come like you are writing something you heard from the lecturer and you don't even remember it clearly. So you are writing just anything you heard. At this level, that is not how your answer should be like. When you write like that, I heard this, you don't even know which connects to this, you just write anything. You will also be awarded marks in that wretched manner. And you know the implications of when we award marks wretchedly. So let's read. All that I'm trying to say is that let's go and read and fill the gaps. Okay. So that is basically about professional ethics, fundamental principles of professional ethics, integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, professional behavior. Please mute your microphone. So these are the fundamental principles of professional ethics. Then we said that the auditor, for many reasons, can be disturbed, can be blocked from doing his work according to these beautiful principles. And those things that can block the auditor are things we are calling threats. And we have found 5 groups of threats: self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, intimidation. And what each of them means and what specific things can go inside each of them. And lastly, we have talked about how we can deal with these threats. What can we do to remove the threats, if it is possible to remove without any serious implications? Or if it cannot be removed, how we bring the threats down so that it will not affect the profession and the professional judgment. So that's what we have looked at so far in connection with professional ethics. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, no questions. So the first part of the lecture, I recorded and uploaded it to the YouTube channel as Fundamental Principles of Professional Ethics, Part 1. So I'm going to add this one as Part 2. And then you can watch and watch and watch as a way of reminding yourself of the things we have spoken. Okay, so if you don't have any questions for me, this is where we will end the lecture, and God willing, next week, because your course rep negotiated that we push the quiz to next week, which will be 20th. Okay, it can be any day within next week, not necessarily 22nd. So it can be any day within next week, if it is appropriate for all of us. So right next week.
Sir,
yes, please.
Sir, please, can we have a day? So because If it's just any day, prepare for it, and probably
So the any
setting other
day,
lectures.
the any day excluding Friday, I want it to be flexible for you. So based on your circumstances, you tell me that okay, this day, it will be good for us to have the quiz. Because the point is, if I detect a day, you will come back and tell me that oh, on this day we have a lecture, we have this, we have that, we have that. Or we can decide to do it early in the morning before main lecture starts. So I'm leaving that decision with you to agree on. Then you give me the feedback, so I also see how it goes.
Okay, sir.
Okay, and one last thing is, please, let's all try to be on all the platforms. Information is the key thing when it comes to learning. Let's all of us be on the platforms that I said we should be on, because it doesn't take anything. Just be on it and relax, because when you are on them, any alerts, any information, you get the alert. You will not be relying on a friend telling you. What about if the friend forgets to tell you? So let's all of us be on the platform, and let's use the resources on the platform. When I checked the number of views from the video that I uploaded about 4 days ago, a class of 150, right? 150 plus. Course rep, is that true?
Yes, please.
150 plus.
I think it should be 150, not plus.
Okay, 150. About 150.
Yes, sir.
Only 53 people have viewed. And it's even possible that some of the views that go into this 53 can be the same people. So either 53 separate views or less than that. So if I take it like 53 separate persons, what is the remaining 100 people doing? And this video, you couldn't maybe join the lecture or online means of lecture. So many things can happen. Connectivity issues in our country, blah, 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 blah. 4 days has elapsed. 53 persons at most have tried to see what that video is about. 100 people. They are waiting, okay, till the last day. Then they go and juggle things. If you do it that way, you always have problems with your grade. Your problems will not be the teacher. No, far from that. Your problem will be your own self. So please, that's just a word of advice. So thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.